life comes at you fast when you love putting things off and then get incredibly busy at the same time. But this ain't about that. This week's main course is about Smile Pretty Cure, which may be the largest gap between. Actually, no, that's not true. I was going to say it might be the largest gap between actually watching the season and then talking about it, but that would probably be Max Heart, considering it was upwards of 3 years between when I actually watched the original season and Max Heart and then talked about them. But it's not about those either. This is about Smile Pretty Cure, which is a season that, speaking of Max Heart, thrives on its callbacks and familiarity with other seasons of Pretty Cure and with, I wouldn't say popular media in general, but with classical media, popular culture, because a lot of Smile Pretty Cure is referential or draws upon inspiration from previous seasons of Pretty Cure. And that could be said about pretty much any of the seasons, but Smile Pretty Cure feels like an incredibly safe season compared to maybe not a lot of the others, but some of them, and especially compared to its immediate predecessor, Sweet Pretty Cure, which took some risks, and that's all I'll say about Sweet Pretty Cure. But Smile Pretty Cure feels like an incredibly safe sequel. It is inoffensive in its characters. They are pretty much all super tight right off the get-go. As soon as they get introduced to one another, they're besties for life. And personally, I kind of enjoyed that more, especially coming right into Smile Pretty Cure off of the back of Sweet Pretty Cure. I liked that the characters met each other and said, hey, you're a middle school girl, I'm a middle school girl, one of us may be a magical girl yet, and the other one will be next episode, who knows, but we're best friends now. And I liked that. It was kind of refreshing compared to last season, I'm not gonna lie. But it's fine. They still have their ups and downs a little bit in their relationships. It's not all smiles and rainbows, but it is all Smile Pretty Cure. And I liked the season. I think it was very good, despite very clearly being a safe season. We have a lot of influence from Yes Pretty Cure 5 in the fact that it is a team of 5 who are all one unique color. And like that's going to be all Magical Girl media. That's going to be all a Pretty Cure. But just something about the way they have this season set up and the elements associated with each of them with their colors. Each character feels like they could have been the Digimon evolution of a previous season's character in terms of that part of it. And I think that's fine because it means that viewers who have already watched it for a long time are already going to kind of know what they're getting in for. And viewers who have seen any sort of Magical Girl media are going to be immediately able to pick up on it a little bit easier. And viewers who have maybe watched any sort of media that has a team in it, you know, you could go through any sort of seinen show or shonen or a lot, maybe not a lot, but some shoujo, and say, oh, team of 5, all right, here are their colors, and that's kind of their personalities too a little bit. You can figure it out from there. And I think that is done to Smile Pretty Cure's benefit. I think there is also a fair bit that draws upon the first season, where they kind of almost beat the big bad halfway through, but then still end up having to deal with the bad guys, the bad end kingdom over the rest of the show. And honestly, the first half of Smile Pretty Cure had me pretty interested in what was going to happen with the bad guys in the Bad End Kingdom, because we had our main antagonist, Piero, who was sealed away and all that, And then we have our clown of the town, Joker, which I almost wish they would have leaned harder into the card aesthetic, because we have the Royal Queen, and then deep into the show we have Royal Candy. And I almost wish that they would have leaned deeper into the card suit aesthetic with the antagonists specifically, because we have Joker. Joker functionally is our main antagonist for most of the show. He always has the threat of Piero hanging over him, mostly used to threaten the other antagonists who are with him, but they don't do a whole lot with him being Joker the Clown. And I think that it would have been really cool to see him do something with that, because we've got Wolf Run and Akaoni and Majorina, and they are clearly drawing from storybook inspiration. We've got our Oni who comes to punish bad children. We got our Ao Oni hit video game. We've got our evil witch. We've got our big bad wolf, and like that's fun. But I almost wish they would have pushed a little bit harder into some sort of King, Queen, Jack aesthetic or influence in Akaoni, Majorita, and Wolf Run, or switch them around. I just feel like Akaoni is kind of the one who would be the king in them, and just in terms of he's big and he's loud and he hits stuff good with his club. But they didn't do that, and then Joker is just kind of a guy who is very sinister and spooky, and he actually does a pretty good job, I think, of being kind of an intimidating force. He doesn't do a whole lot for most of the time, but he provides the antagonists with their power source, their upgrades for their abilities whenever they're wanting to summon their Akanbes, and some of them I liked and some of them I didn't, but I liked that they had sort of a unique aesthetic going for them. They were leaning very hard into the clown theming for a lot of that, and I am not fully certain why they wanted to lean into the cloud theming when most of the other stuff with their antagonists were storybook themed. They had bad end in the name of the kingdom they were supposed to be from, and most of the episodes could have some sort of point you could draw as like a storybook. Like a lot of times Pretty Cure will have an episode where it's like, and here's the moral of the story, kids. Stay in school. Don't do drugs. That would actually be kind of a wild moral for a Pretty Cure episode to have. When do I get to the season where they have to have a drugs are bad type episode? But especially the episodes where Majorina is the one in charge of what they are going to be dealing with, whether they know it or not, because there are several episodes also where Majorina has made some sort of magical device or alchemical concoction that, by pure happenstance, ends up affecting our Pretty Cures, and they have to then deal with that for the rest of the episode. Until they can solve whatever problem they've run into as a result of it. And then also the bad guys will show up. And I feel like the episodes that are set up like that, not a lot happens. A not insignificant portion of Smile Pretty Cure is spent not really doing anything. And it's not great for the season overall, I feel, but it's not done poorly either. It doesn't make me not want to watch the show whenever they're just kind of not doing anything. They're just chilling. They're just hanging out. They're Jay Coolin. And I enjoyed those episodes considerably. Some of the fairy tale episodes are maybe not ones that I enjoyed quite as much. They had a Cinderella episode, like 3 episodes before doing a movie for the season that was largely based around Cinderella. The majority of it was. It had influence from other storybooks, as any good movie, I guess, would have, I suppose, if that's what they're wanting to do with it. But to do that so soon after coming off of a Cinderella episode seemed kind of weird. It made me kind of feel like they had a different person writing the script. I guess that is something I could probably very easily verify. They had a different person writing the script for the show, who then went on to find out afterwards, oh, they've been planning a movie where they were going to do almost the same thing we did in this episode. But if they had kind of addressed it a little bit more in the movie, that might have been fine. But, you know, they don't, because it's episodic, and that's fine. But, I don't know. It's kind of odd when it gets to that point in terms of them sort of rehashing the storybook ideas. And they do the storybooks in Yes, Pretty Cure 5 several times over. They do storybook episodes, which is another part of why I feel like this show draws upon inspiration from the previous seasons. And circling back to the season 1 influence and them beating the bad guy halfway through and then still having to beat the bad guy at the end of it again when he actually comes back for reals this time. Don't worry about the last time it happened, I promise. He's just as strong as ever. The first half of the show, like I was saying earlier, had me very interested in how the bad guys were going to progress and how the cures were going to handle that progression. Because every time the bad guys summoned one of their Akanbes, one of their clown boys showed up and started causing problems, the screen showed this countdown clock. And it very clearly started at a number that was not going to be the episode count of the show. So I have to wonder if watching it live, viewers might have thought that this season of Pretty Cure was only going to be 12 episodes, 24 episodes, because they typically only will do one monster antagonist fight per episode. It's a monster of the week type show. That's how they do it. That's how you run your show. That's how you run your scripting. Because otherwise, you're writing an hour-long episode of television with not an hour-long worth of content to fill in between the fights. And even then, sometimes the fights are just like the last part of the show. They're a little bit of an afterthought, which, you know, is sometimes to the episode's benefit, because some of the episodes are just fun when they aren't doing any magical girling, and I appreciated that about this season. But the first part of the show was really interesting, because they very clearly were using the Akanbe to draw their suffering in, to summon or reawaken and unseal the binding on Piero's seal of magic that the royal queen put on him. And it seemed very dramatic. It seemed very important. But it wasn't something that any of the characters seemed clued into, except for Joker. Like, even the other antagonists did not seem to acknowledge that. I guess they did, actually. I guess they did know that they were using this power to channel energy into Piero's reawakening. But they never really talked about the timer that they have on it. That's probably more a visual indicator for the viewer than anything. But it is a little disappointing that once that timer hit 0 and then our Cures fought and won, they just kind of started the timer over. We got a second timer that then they were using to count down until the reawakening of Piero. And the second time around, it was significantly less exciting to see that timer tick down and see it draw closer to his resurrection. I think once it reached the very end of it, it did get a little bit more intense and interesting. But the first well over half of that second timer, it was just not that fun. Because it's oh yeah, the timer that they already beat once and are having to deal with again, and I'm having to think about again now. I guess that's fine. I'm not complaining that it's here, but I just don't really care all that much. But that's really just all that to say, that's really just a minor gripe with the season. It's fine other than that. I think it's a little goofy that Miyuki was able to somehow find the right book combination on the shelf to open the way to that mystic library, which is fine. It's silly. It's fine. It's funny. I like it. I like that they have a headquarters also. That is one thing that I have really wanted out of several of these seasons, is that they just kind of have a place where they can chill. And like, yes, Pretty Cure 5, they had Nuts House, and they would just go there, and they would just cool in the back of the shop. And it's like, hey, you're our magic dogs from the Candyland, and we're going to hang out in your shop while you're running it. And they do their homework there, and they eat snacks there, and it's great. And the Smile Pretty Cure girls get that too. They get their magic library that connects to all the stories in the world, and it's really fun that they get to just have a place where they can chill separately. And it also fixes I wouldn't say fix. I would say it addresses an inconvenience that other seasons could have, where, oh, they need to get somewhere to fight a bad guy. Well, now they have a library that connects to any bookshelf in the world. And I am so glad and entertained by the fact that they played around with the fact that they have a library that can access any bookshelf in the world. They just go to Antarctica or the peak of a mountain with a little resort on it, or like just anywhere. They go anywhere for fun and for free, as long as they focus and think about it before they go there. And it makes for an entertaining time when they can change the locale of the episode so easily. Even on episodes where they aren't focusing on having to beat one of the bad guys, it just lets them go and do more things. And I think that is one thing that the seasons have continued to build and build upon. Some more so than others, but I feel like there are several seasons that really like to push the cures outside of whatever town in Japan that they are in. Sometimes it's a named location, sometimes it's just a nondescript city. And this is one of those seasons where I think the writers kind of wanted to have fun with where they got to put them, instead of having to bring everything to them. Even if they don't do it a ton, they still get to do that a little bit. And I liked that. I thought that was fun. Another similarity to, especially, yes, Pretty Cure 5, is that the mysterious benefactor, magical queen, granting them the power from the land of the fairies that they come from, and they're also trying to kind of resurrect her while dealing with the antagonists doing their own resurrection, is the friend of the one that they are using as a mascot fairy. It was kind of a convoluted way to say it, but Candy, their plush cuddly mascot, is the daughter of the queen, who is sealed away because she used all of her strength. But she's not even sealed away. She's just kind of dying, I guess, because she used all her strength to seal Piero away. And I think on paper, I shouldn't like Candy. I don't think if I had read about Smile Pretty Cure going into it, I would have liked the idea of Candy. She strikes me as something that would be kind of annoying, but I didn't mind Candy. I kind of liked her. She was fun. She was at times pretty, like, annoyingly childish, but she is very clearly a child. She's just straight up like a baby most of the time. And not quite to the extent that we have in Fresh Pretty Cure, but almost. And she's not nearly as annoying as I feel like that type of character normally is to me specifically. Which isn't a complaint about this season. It's just kind of interesting for me to observe that there are things on paper that I feel would maybe not otherwise work so well. But it turned out well for Smile Pretty Cure, so I'm not complaining. I'm going in, clapping my hands, going, "Woo, yes, give me more of that instead of what we had last season." I feel bad just dogging on Sweet Pretty Cure, but like, man, that's kind of where we're at with this season, huh? We come into Smile Pretty Cure like, all right, I'm ready for something different. I'm ready for it to be mixed up compared to last time. Please and thank you. And then they mix it up by playing it incredibly safe and having an incredibly tame season until the later part of it. Because after the first part of the season, things start to pick up a little bit, especially deep into it. We have a series of episodes where after our lead Cure Happy she is basically outpaced all of the other Cures in terms of strength. And me personally, as a big time Dragon Ball Z fan and enjoyer of dumb shit on the internet, I think power scaling is really funny. And I think power scaling Pretty Cure is really funny. And to me, it comes across a little bit like Cure Happy has outpaced the other Cures in terms of strength. They can operate on their own a little bit, but whenever it comes time to actually beat the enemies, Happy needs to be there because Happy needs to be the one to strike the final blow. Otherwise, they aren't going to be strong enough to beat the antagonist, especially once they get the Super Akanbes. And they do some funny bits with the Super Akanbes to drag out that timer I mentioned earlier a little bit, which is fine. It was kind of funny. I like the one where they're at the Cinderella castle and Wolfram pulls out the Akanbe. He even yells Akanbe, and then Majorina or Akira Oni, I can't remember, are like, "Why'd you use the regular one?" He's like, I forgot. Well, it doesn't matter. That's a good bit. It's just like 5 seconds. They just make a joke about it for the viewer and then move on. And I liked. I'll circle back to the dynamic about the antagonists, but the Cure Happy thing, she's strong. She becomes a very strong, pretty magical girl. She becomes a very strong Pretty Cure, and I like that they have a noticeable growth in strength. That's that good. And I liked that they had episodes dedicated to each character advancing. It does what any of these shows would do, where they have a struggle in their personal life that is then reflected into their struggle as a magical girl, and then they fight through it. Those are some of the best episodes of the season. They are pretty deep into the season, but they are really good. I feel like once you get past the initial safe episodes, first 2/3 of this season, it starts to take a lot more risks with having mature character arcs for our magical girls that several of the previous seasons didn't have. This to me feels very much like they are drawing a lot upon the maturity that they go through in Heartcatch, especially, which I don't like just comparing this season to previous seasons, but this is like 7 years into a long-running magical girl anime. That's just kind of how things are gonna work, huh? But they feel like very good natural character arcs for each of the characters, and I like that they get chances to grow in their own right without the need for Happy to be the one to have to save them. And like, that's kind of the point of it, is to advance them so that they're all strong and they can all stand on their own right. But they also still rely on one another because they're bestest friends forever. That's what that Pretty Cure is all about. It's not singular. It's all of them together. Yippee! And some of those episodes are incredibly emotionally intensive. They have Sunny just gets her shop absolutely wrecked. And then they try to destroy her precious little badge that her friends made her, and she just gets fired right up and explodes in a good way, with power, with fire magic, like the Hololive Advent song Rebellion, fire, fire, like the fire. That was actually about Cure Sunny. I was told so by the singers of that song. And I think the biggest example of it is the episode with March, which, like, her name is so kind of goofy. The fact that they're PreCure names, Happy, Sunny, okay, I'm with you so far, and then Peace, okay, all right, I guess, and then it's Cure March. It's like, okay, we were doing kind of a thing about like being happy, like Cure Happy, but now we're in March. I guess it's spring, so like, okay, it's springtime. It's like a new time of year. It's new growth. It's turning over a new leaf type deal. And then Cure Beauty, and it's just that's another part of the show that I wish kind of had some sort of consistency to it. That was more. It was a more tight consistency than it had. Because it just kind of, I feel like they kind of lost the plot a little bit when they were making the names of our Pretty Cures for this season. But Cure March, her personal growth episode, I feel like is one that a lot of people have seen just on YouTube in general before they get into Pretty Cure even, or after, and when they're looking at top 10 Pretty Cure moments of all time. Because Majorina tries to just murder some children in that one. And not in the normal, oh, you're a magical girl, so I'm going to fight you to beat you kind of way. But in the, she basically kidnaps some of March's siblings, all of March's siblings, and damn, she got a lot of those. And then she is fighting to save her siblings, and then while she is fighting Majorina, she shoots magic. Like, Majorina shoots magic at where some of her siblings are frozen, basically, like petrified, and I think they're hypnotized in some manner. I don't quite remember, but they are stuck in place. And March is too slow to get to them in time. That magic attack is very clearly going to hit them, and they are normal children. That magic attack is going to kill them. And even if it wasn't a strong enough attack to kill them, March sure acts like it was, because it is probably one of the most emotionally intensive bits of character acting I think I've seen in Pretty Cure in general, but especially in this season, it's pretty dramatic, and not in a bad way, but that is drama. She is about to witness some of her family get exploded, and she is powerless to do anything about it. And now, luckily, Peace and Sunny and we got Happy. Why did I say Peace first? She's our yellow. She's my favorite. Or Sunny. I'm not sure. I like the yellow ones a lot of the time. And the lightning element she has is really good. But March, like, her friends show up and save them. Thank goodness. She saved the day. And March can fight without needing to worry about her siblings' safety, because she can rely on her friends. And so she can use her full power to beat the bad guy. And it's good. It's very fun. And I really like those parts of this season. They do a really fun job of that. And then at the end of the season, we get a lot of really cool stuff back to back. Like the multiple really crazy battles that are going on because Joker is taking Piero's power into his body or being used as a vessel for his resurrection. And the princess form upgrades are really cool. I really like those power ups. They look pretty cool. Something about the weird Halo style that they have is very intriguing to me. I just really like those designs, and I think they're very cool. And the heavy focus on the big fight that they're having. Like, all of them are having their big fights while this is going on, and it's so cool. And Cure Happy gets an attack that is incredibly reminiscent of the human extinction beam that Super Boo does in Dragon Ball Z, where she just raises her arm and shoots a pillar of beams into the sky that then spread out and rain down upon just a horde of monsters. And she decimates the monsters, and it's great. But then it is a little funny when they are doing like the final push against Piero, ultimate despair realized form or whatever. They're shooting their big laser beam at him to kill him because he's trying to blow up the Earth. The animation that they're using there is almost identical, if not just actually straight up identical, to the Pretty Cure All Stars DX3 movie finale against a black hole. Like, it is almost shot for shot the same. And I know Pretty Cure likes to reuse animation. They do it all the time. That's fine. It saves budget and time. And they're cranking these things out weekly, which is insane because they're 48 to 50 episode long seasons. Each season is one series most of the time. So, like, that's not a bad thing. It's just incredibly funny to see that and go, wait a minute, I know those frames. I know that setup. And the screaming that Happy does during some of that beam clash is just really intense. Like, she puts a lot into those yells. Like, they got some good VAs for this season. Not to say the other seasons have bad VAs, but like, man, they go to town in this season. And I'm here for it. Like, Smile Pretty Cure is a lot of fun. It's a very good season, and like, it's honestly not a bad place to get into the franchise from in general. Like, it's deep enough in that a lot of our common tropes are going to have been long established, and you can kind of track back where they came from. But it's still a new enough or an old enough entry that it feels like part of the beginning of the franchise. I can only say that, looking back on it in 2025 currently, as of looking at this recording. But like, it's a pretty old season at this point, and it holds up really well. It's just a fun time. It's very good. Like, I liked this season. I think it is like a solid 8 out of 10. I like a lot of their designs. The Pretty Cure forms are fun. They're nice. The princess forms are very good. I really liked their school uniforms. Some of the seasons haven't really liked their school uniforms, and they are in them a lot of the time. So it's nice to be able to look at them and go, you got some cute designs. That's fun. I like you guys. You're pretty cool. And while the characters aren't anything super dramatic, they aren't the most deep or nuanced characters in media or fiction. That's not exactly the point, and that's okay, because they're still enjoyable. They're still fun to watch and hang out with and see what kind of shenanigans they get up to. And I really liked this season. I think it is at least an 8 out of 10. It's very fun. It's a good time. Smile Pretty Cure is very nice. It makes me smile. Ha ha ha.